Hello there fam, welcome to Dad Mode Game Time, where we take a look at a video game that can offer our young gamers a skill, a life lesson, a role model, or is just really good at bringing people together. It's October and that means spooky season, so I thought we'd take a look at some spooky games. Today we're taking a look at Darkest Dungeon by Red Hook. Come on, let's go check it out. Before we get started, I do want to issue a couple of trigger warnings about this game. In the opening cinematic, the character involved takes his own life. He grabs a gun, and then from off camera, you can hear a gunshot and the sound of a body hitting the floor. If you are someone who does not feel good about that kind of thing, if you have background with that kind of event, then skip the opening cutscene, or at least skip the very end. Just wanted to let you know that's there. Also, in this game, they feature different elements of self-harm. Self-flagellation is a way to relieve stress, and that is problematic. Definitely have a talk with your gamer about healthy ways to manage your stress levels. When the characters get stressed out enough on dungeon missions, they may also harm themselves or hurt each other. They may become verbally abusive. And if your gamer or you have a history with this kind of mistreatment, then bear this one in mind. Maybe this one's not for you. And that's okay. I just want you to not get horrendously upset by something that is in this video game. Also, depending on who you are, there is a brothel in this, which the hero characters can visit for stress relief. If you have a problem with that kind of work, of course you don't see anything. It's just moving your character's portrait to the box and hitting the button, and they say something mildly suggestive. But still, it's there. If you have a moral or other problem with that kind of work, then bear that one in mind. Work is work. It's what it is. Alright, so we got that part out of the way. But what is Darkest Dungeon? Darkest Dungeon is a roguelike, and if you've been on the channel for some time, I think I've recommended more than my fair share of roguelikes. So, of course, roguelike means the characters are randomly generated. The stagecoach will randomly generate a group that you may select from to add to your roster. The dungeon areas are randomly generated, so the maps are going to look a little different every time. The enemies encountered are going to have random compositions drawn from a certain pool. The loot tables are going to be randomly generated, and that means that you never know what you're going to get. In the game, you are the descendant of the man in the cutscene at the beginning of the game. He has requested that you return to this hamlet and to his manor and right the terrible wrongs that he perpetrated a long time ago. So you bring along your hired mercenary band, you venture forth into the manor grounds, you fight the monsters that are there, you return back with the money and the heirlooms that have been plundered from your ancestors' old estate, and you use them to rebuild the hamlet so that your mercenaries may be even better equipped for even greater forays into the manor grounds, until eventually you have built up a force that can withstand and defeat the Darkest Dungeon. Just like it says in the title, right? The roster is wide-ranging from holy crusaders and vestals, highwaymen, jesters. There's a hellion, which, if you play Dungeons & Dragons, think about a barbarian. There's a leper who, yeah, he has leprosy. He wears a mask. He has a giant sword. He swings like a truck. Pretty cool character. One DLC character is the Flagellant, who hits people with his spiked mace and also inflicts self-harm. There's that trigger warning again. in order to activate some of his powers. He's a religious fanatic. So letting you know that character exists in the Crimson Court DLC. Another DLC character is the Shieldbreaker, who is an amputee. Her left arm is cut off at the forearm. She wields a shield on that arm, and she's a fun character to play. I really enjoy her. There's grave robbers. There's the abomination, which can transform into a terrible beast. There are all sorts of characters in this game that you can use to create your group and to tackle the dungeons. So you build your group, you choose your dungeon, and then you have to get outfitted for the adventure. You need food, torches, shovels. There's first aid elements like bandages, laudanum, anti-venom. There's even holy water. There are skeleton keys because you will run across locked chests, and you can use these things to interact with different items that you find in the game, which are often referred to as curios. That is the stuff you need, but it limits the amount of treasure that you can take back. And like I often do when I'm playing the game, I run across moments where I have to decide, do I really need to hang on to that one last bandage, or do I think I can finish the mission without it? What's worth leaving behind? What's worth taking with you? It's a challenge. It's a very big decision, and there have been more than a few moments when I have thrown out an element of my first aid kit to make room for a statue or a picture or a gemstone, and found out, oh, I actually really needed that stuff. So there's this tricky balance of staying prepared and being able to stay alive, or going for the gold, literally going for the gold, and potentially dying. And that's a problem, because in this game, when your characters die, they don't come back. I've lost dozens of characters during my playthrough of Darkest Dungeon, the one that you see now on the screen. So your gamer is going to have to choose. Do they risk losing someone that they've invested a lot of time and resources into for a little bit of money, or do they play it safe and try to keep their characters alive? Of course, running the dungeons is a lot more than managing a health total and managing resources. In this game, I mentioned that there are forms of stress relief, and the reason for that is your characters will endure stress as they walk down the dilapidated halls of the manor, as they fight the horrible monsters. As the torchlight dims, they will accrue more stress, usually. And there are monsters out there in this game that exist solely to stress out your heroes. And when they reach 100 stress, they may become afflicted. They might become abusive, they may become paranoid or fearful or irrational. In the Flagellant's case, he becomes rapturous and starts ranting about the end of the world. Or, on the other hand, they may rise above all of their horrible surroundings and situation, and they may become virtuous in some way. They may become courageous or vigorous or, well, those are the only two I could think of. Honestly, it doesn't often happen. Usually they end up breaking down. And when that happens, your characters may hurt themselves. They may put themselves in a situation that is not helpful for the rest of your party. They may pass their turn. They may refuse healing. And the more characters that become afflicted, the more difficult the mission becomes. Thankfully, if you find your team is falling apart, you can retreat and return to town and take care of your people and try again later. Anything that you don't use in your supplies is sold back to the shop, and all of the money and heirlooms that you gather are returned to your coffers, so it's never going to be a total loss. But how much chance you take is up to you. Choose wisely. Also, as a side effect of completing missions, Or, sometimes not completing missions, your characters may gain certain quirks. Some of these quirks are positive, like becoming irrepressible, or some of these quirks may be, well, they may not be great, like getting a torn rotator cuff, or becoming obsessed with alcohol or food. And those can be taken care of at the sanitarium, which is definitely giving off One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest vibes, but that's just the aesthetic of the video game. You can choose to lock in certain good traits. You can choose to remove certain bad traits. Of course, your characters will acquire both good and bad quirks over the course of the game, and there's really no stopping it. If your character becomes diseased, they can also visit the sanitarium to have those diseases cured. The base game for Darkest Dungeon is available for $25 on Windows PC through the Steam Online Store and I believe the Epic Games storefront. It's available on PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, if anyone has one of those anymore, Nintendo Switch, or Xbox One. There are also several DLC packages. I mentioned the Crimson Court earlier, which is about $10 for PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch, and $5 for the iPad. The Shieldbreaker DLC, which involves that character, is about $4 for PC, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and $2 on the iPad. The Color of Madness DLC is about $5, but is not available on the iPad. The Musketeer reskin for the Arbalist character is free. The Butcher's Circus content is also free. The Butcher's Circus is only available on PC. The Musketeer reskin is available on all of the platforms for free. So that's kind of a lot, but you can buy them in bundles. The Crimson Edition includes the Crimson Court bundled with the Darkest Dungeon for $30 on PlayStation 4 and the Vita, or $25 on the Xbox One. The Ancestral Edition is available on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch, and that includes all of the DLCs, the Crimson Court, the Shieldbreaker, the Color of Madness, and the Musketeer. That one runs $40. The Steam version of the Ancestral Edition is $48.55 because you can get the soundtrack for the video game alongside of it. The Collector's Edition is available on the Switch and the PlayStation 4 and the Vita. $30 for PlayStation 4, $34.99 for the Switch and the PS Vita. I'm not sure why. There is a CE Signature Edition. I don't know how widely available this one is. For about $45 on PlayStation 4 and $50 on the Switch and the PS Vita. So you have options. As always, I recommend the Steam Online Store because they often have a lot of great discounts, and because this game is older, you will often find it on sale. Darkest Dungeon does have a sequel, Darkest Dungeon 2, which you can buy on Steam as a bundle for a reduced price, so bear that one in mind. Darkest Dungeon is a dreary, gloomy, stressful game about managing your resources, your health, and your mental health. And I think learning discretion about when to stop and try again and how to take care of yourself is all great stuff. Just don't self-flagellate. That's a horrible idea. I think this game has something that's worthwhile, even though it does have problematic elements. And I think learning how to manage a team, manage their stress, understanding the different quirks of their personalities can be something worthwhile. Of course, real-life people are not a character sheet, but it can be a starting point. This is kind of a safe area for people to learn where the limits are and how far is too far. So that might be something that's worthwhile. Like always, if you get this one, let me know in the comments how you felt about it. If you're going to skip this one, of course, also let me know why that is. And whatever you're doing, whatever you're playing, I hope that you are having fun, and we'll see you next game time.